Developing relationships doesn't mean that everything is always rainbows and unicorns all the time. No, it means that you're willing to lean in to have those difficult conversations, to talk about what's going well and what's not going well, and how you can help each other improve. Hi, and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Kerry Siggins, and I'm so glad you're here today. Today, we're going to talk about why every leadership team should try a live 360 feedback session. Feedback is such an important part of the Stone Age culture. I'm a huge believer in it. I am writing a book on my feedback model, which I just got my edits back from my editor, and I need to dive into them because I finally got the first draft done. I talked about that in a previous episode. But anyway, I'm a huge believer in 360s and in feedback, and I decided I wanted to try a live session. Now, I did this years ago with a very different team that I had, it was probably a decade ago now. But the team that I have built over the last few years it's remarkable. We are so incredibly close knit and tight, and we give each other feedback. And I thought we should try this. Let's see what happens when we do a live 360. And it was so good. It was powerful. It was positive. It was productive. And the feedback was very real. And so I wanted to create a podcast to share this with you, to tell you about why this format works, how to do it right, what to avoid, and to hopefully inspire you to consider doing something like this, even though it is scary. And you will probably have people on your team who don't want to do it because it makes them feel uncomfortable and nervous. But there's an easy way to start, and I highly recommend it. So before I dive into why you should consider it and how to do it, I just want to share a little bit about what we did during ours. We did it on the first night after a 2-day planning session. So we'd been together all day, talking strategy, team building, really positive day. And then we all went to dinner, and we booked a dinner at a great restaurant that has a private room. And I asked everyone to use the stop, start, continue method. So start doing something, stop doing something, and continue doing something. That way it gave it structure, and that's relatively easy to come up with that kind of feedback. We wanted to make this feel as safe and comfortable as possible, even though you're about to get feedback in front of your peers. So we sat down for dinner, and everybody was prepared with it, and we picked a person. Let's say Jane is going to go first. And everybody went around the room and gave Jane stop, start, continue, each person. So I gave stop, start, continue. The next person gave stop, start, continue, and so on. And the person couldn't say anything during the feedback, but they could talk about what their key takeaway was or how it resonated after they got the feedback from all of the people at the table. And it was so powerful. It couldn't have been more perfect. One of my key team members said, "I'll go first," which was great. And so we all gave her the feedback, and she was like, "This was amazing. It was so spot on. It was so empowering, but it was also like tough. There was real feedback in it." And then after we finished doing the feedback session, we actually talked about an icebreaker that we didn't do earlier that morning, which was, what is your biggest leadership fear? It was so incredibly powerful. I can't even tell you how moving it was. People on my team walked out feeling fantastic. They had actionable things to work on, and they felt supported, and there was alignment, and everybody got feedback. They're like, "Yeah, I agree with that." And because it was so powerful, I had to share it with you so that you can experiment with it too. So let's dive in. Why should leaderships consider doing 360s just in general? One, it's really important to get that kind of feedback. When you get a 360, it highlights the blind spots that you might not get in surveys or performance reviews. It's truly a 360 from your peers. If you do a broader 360, you might have your direct reports. We're doing all of that as well. A little bit different format in the live 360, but the blind spots is really the important thing here. You want to close the gap between what you perceive your performance to be and how others are perceiving your performance or how you're showing up. Closing that gap is really important, and that's where 360 can come in. And when you have a 360 done well, it builds psychological safety and trust, especially when that feedback is framed constructively, because you know that your teammates are there to help you become a better leader, a better person, a better employee, better at your job. A 360 also fosters self-awareness and emotional intelligence in leadership. You need to understand yourself to be a good leader, and understanding other people's perceptions of you helps you foster that self-awareness. It helps you develop your emotional intelligence. It's really important. A 360 also promotes a culture of direct, kind, and open communication, especially when you do it live, which is really important. You want to have a high performing, high functioning team. And you can't do that if people don't feel comfortable giving each other feedback. And finally, the last reason why you should consider doing it is that it encourages this collective ownership mindset that everyone there is here to grow and to perform better and to improve and to uncover those blind spots. And that is what the ownership mindset is all about. I love this quote from Ken Blanchard. He says, feedback is the breakfast of champions. I could not agree more. And that is why you should consider doing a live 360. So how do you structure a live 360? I recommend starting with the stop, start, continue method like we did. You go around the room, one person at a time, gets all the feedback. One person shares all their feedback. It's easy, it flows, and you should schedule about 15 to 20 minutes per person. It did not take us that long. It probably was about 10 minutes because we didn't allow commentary until the end. That one person receives all the feedback before responding. Everyone shares their stop, start, continue for that individual before you move on to the next person. The receiver listens silently, can take notes, and then at the end, they reflect on what resonated and what their takeaway will be. It needs to be in a private room so that it's as comfortable as possible. I highly recommend doing it over a meal. Doing it over a meal helps take away the corporate feel of doing it in a conference room. It just makes it more relaxed, and it is incredibly powerful. So how do you prepare for a live 360? You need to have all of the team members prep the feedback in advance. You really want to encourage thoughtfulness because this matters. People are going to be nervous about getting feedback in front of their peers, so it needs to be well thought out. You also want to help coach that mindset with your teammates. Frame this as a growth opportunity, not an attack. And that's both for the people preparing the feedback and for the person who is receiving it. This is all here to help us be better leaders. And we as leaders need to be able to take feedback. We have to check our egos at the door and truly listen. And that's what you do for mindset coaching. You want to have a quiet space with no interruptions where people don't feel rushed. Again, I think that you should do it over a meal, but if you can't, I understand, you should still do it. You can have a facilitator if you would like. It is optional but helpful, especially for first-time groups, because I have done this so many times and I lead workshops. I did not have a problem doing this, and my team is really tight-knit. If you have maybe more dysfunction in your team or people who are afraid to do this, it might be worth hiring a facilitator to come in and lead the session. The next step is to set the ground rules for the Live 360 session. And this is so that there's clear expectations and there's psychological safety. So the first ground rule is that there's no interrupting or no defending while receiving the feedback. You just have to listen to the feedback that's being given. Number 2, assume positive intent. Feedback truly is a gift. And even if it's not delivered in the most perfect format or somebody blunders it or maybe comes out a little too forceful, don't take it personally. Assume positive intent. Remember that it is a gift and that person is probably just as nervous giving you the feedback as you are getting it. For those of you who are giving the feedback, you want to be specific, have specific examples, be kind, and be honest. And always be direct. That is the key to giving feedback. Specific, kind, helpful, direct. And when you're giving it, use I statements. I've observed this. Instead of you always do this, I observe. That makes it feel less of an attack. And again, you're owning that it's your observations and you might not always be right, or that your perception might not be their perception, and that creates an opportunity for dialogue. And then finally, set the ground rule for confidentiality and trust. What is shared in the room stays in the room, and that is really important. People don't want you to go out and be like, oh, so-and-so got all of this kind of feedback after they had the courage to sit there and do a live 360. So confidentiality is paramount, and it's really important to set that ground rule up front. So what makes this type of feedback so powerful? The real-time connection amplifies its impact. And I will tell you that is exactly what happened. In fact, I was talking to one of my executives about a week afterwards, and I asked them how they felt about the feedback session. And this person got emotional and said it was absolutely amazing because of the deep connection they felt with the rest of the team and how powerful and thoughtful the feedback was. That doesn't happen in a written 360. It was because we were all sitting there in that room. It absolutely amplified its impact. What also makes this feedback really powerful is that you can see yourself through the eyes of your peers. And especially when you're getting very similar feedback from each person, that shows that there's alignment. It gives you real things to work on. It is so humbling and inspiring when you get kind, helpful feedback from your peers in this format. It also is powerful because it encourages courageous conversations. And that's so important. As leaders, we just can't hide in our offices and protect ourselves from tough feedback. No, we have to have these courageous conversations and really lean into it. It leads to transformational growth. And when there is alignment with a team and you can give each other feedback in this live manner in front of each other, it has the potential to create an unbelievable team. And that's what we're doing here at Stone Age. And that's what I want to encourage you to do. And then finally, it enhances team alignment and it deepens mutual respect. Again, because so much of the feedback was similar from each person to the feedback recipient, it showed that there was alignment. It showed, hey, these are really the things that I need to work on. And here are the things that I need to continue to do because it's bringing goodness to the team. And that alignment is really powerful. And it absolutely built more mutual respect between everyone on the team because everyone was willing to lean into it, to accept the feedback, to say, this is what resonated, this is what my takeaway is going to be, and to do it with grace. It just made it safe. It made everybody feel like, hey, I am part of this really great team. So let's talk about what not to do during a live 360, because this is just as important as all the things you need to do during the live 360. So the first one is don't let feedback get personal or vague. An example would be you're not a team player. That's personal and it's pretty vague. What does that even mean? A better option, which is when you interrupt, it shuts others down. That's very specific and it is not personal, just stating a behavior that you're observing. So remember, it's supposed to be kind, direct, and helpful feedback. So don't make it personal, don't make it vague. Don't weaponize feedback. Tone matters. If you're nervous about giving feedback, you might come across a little strong, you might come in a little hot. Don't do that. That's weaponizing it. You want to be, again, kind and helpful. So consider your tone, practice. You can even use ChatGPT to help you with figuring out a better tone to use if you're a person who's prone to communicate maybe more aggressively or more direct. How do you soften it a bit so that way it can be heard, especially when people are receiving feedback in front of their peers? You also don't want to allow venting or past grievances to surface in an unconstructive way. Not everybody gets along all the time, and it's really easy to harbor ill will from things that have happened in the past. One, you should just stop doing that because whenever you hold on to things, all you're doing is really harming yourself. But more importantly, it's not constructive when you say 2 years ago you did XYZ and I'm still upset about it. That's just not constructive and not helpful. So, when you are thinking about the feedback that you're giving, especially in the context of stop, start, and continue, think about it. Is this pertinent today? Am I hanging on to something that I need to clear with this person one on one so that I can show up in a helpful, constructive way? Airing past grievances, it's not effective. So, don't do that. If you do have past grievances, go work with that person one on one. You also don't want to rush through the feedback. It can be uncomfortable giving feedback, especially in front of your peers, and you might want to hurry and get through it. And that might leave you giving vague feedback or leave more questions than answers. So take your time, take a deep breath, don't rush through it. Here's something I would love for you to consider. Would you stop doing XYZ? Here is why. Take a deep breath. Here is something that I would like you to consider to start doing. XYZ. Take a deep breath. You don't have to rush through it just because you're uncomfortable. Take a deep breath, show up in a cool, calm, and collected manner, and always have that mindset of, I'm trying to be helpful here. And this might not be easy for a person to hear, so I am going to do it as calmly as I can. Also, don't use this as a way to fix somebody. Nobody wants to be fixed. Yes, we need feedback to know where we can improve. We also need feedback to know what we're doing well. But when we feel like people are trying to fix us, that never feels good. And it's usually not taken in a constructive way. So when you give the feedback, especially in the start, stop, and continue method, It's an offering. It's an invitation for them to consider. It's not you trying to fix them. If you want to fix that person, then you probably need to pause and say, okay, is this really the right venue to have this conversation? And is it my responsibility to fix this person? No, it's not. It's your responsibility to give this person feedback, and then they can go do with it what they want. And then finally, when you're setting up the Live 360, don't go into it without setting the expectations and those emotional guardrails, and not just in an email that you send out as preparation, but before the meeting too. Remind everybody that this is meant to be helpful. This is meant to build the team, and that everybody should assume good intentions. Go through the purpose of the Live 360 and line out, this is what we're going to do, and these are the things that we're not going to do. And here are the emotional guardrails in this situation. Really setting those expectations clearly up front will help the session go smoother. And so when we rolled out our Live 360, we did an email to explain to everybody what we were going to do. We talked about what we were going to do in our executive management team meeting the week before. And then when we went to dinner that night, I reiterated again, this is what we're going to do. And here are the things that we aren't going to do. And it really helps set those expectations. So that's how you set up a Live 360 on the things that you should do and what you shouldn't do. And I hope it's inspired you to consider doing this. I get that it can be scary, and maybe announcing this to your team, you're going to get some pushback. But it is amazing what can come out of this. We walked out of that dinner a more connected team. People felt empowered to go work on the areas that they needed to work on. They got positive feedback on things that they needed to continue to do, where their strengths lie, and they felt valued by their team members. Everybody knew that we cared about each other, and that is what made it such a fantastic session. Did some of the feedback sting? I don't know, maybe a little, but for the most part, no. It was all very constructive. People said, yeah, I understand that I do that. And then the beautiful thing is that everybody followed up with each other afterwards. On some of the feedback that I needed more clarity on, I went and talked to that person during our one on ones, and I said, hey, I'd like to understand your perspective on this a little bit more. Can you share this with me? And it allowed for a deeper conversation. And I know that everybody on my executive management team did the same thing with each other. That is how you develop relationships. Developing relationships doesn't mean that everything is always rainbows and unicorns all the time. No, it means that you're willing to lean in to have those difficult conversations, to talk about what's going well and what's not going well, and how you can help each other improve, even if it's just pointing something out that maybe a person didn't realize how big of an impact it was having on the team. I also learned some things about myself in this feedback session as well. First and foremost, I learned that even though I have some of these kind of crazy ideas and everybody's, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. When I listened to myself and I said, this is going to be something really good for our team and we're ready for it, I trusted my gut. And we did it, and it went better than I could have imagined. So I learned that leaning into those uncomfortable things, especially around giving feedback in a live setting where peers can hear the feedback that each other are giving, it is a remarkable thing. And I'm glad that I listened. I also got feedback about being overly positive. I am such a positive person, and I can turn anything bad into something good. And that can be tough for people. They just want to have someone listen to them and say, yeah, that really does suck, not turn it into a positive spin. I recognize that makes me feel better, but that doesn't necessarily make another person feel better. And I really appreciated that feedback. The positive things that I learned about myself is to keep inspiring people with our vision, with where we're going as a company and how we're going to get there. It was such an empowering session, and I so appreciated my team giving me that feedback. And I know, being the CEO, that it was hard for them. In fact, one of them was like, okay, I hope I don't get fired for this. No, you're not going to get fired for that. I'm the one who asked for it. But it does make people nervous to give their peers feedback, and it makes them very nervous to give their boss feedback. I'm so proud of my team for leaning into this and for everybody handling it with such grace and gratitude. It absolutely is going to help level us up. It did. And the next day, we had the second day of the planning session, and everybody was just on fire, and we were smiling and having a good time and just even that much more engaged. It absolutely elevated our team dynamics, and that will have a huge ripple effect. So I would love to encourage you to try this. Try it with humility. Try it with intention, with clear expectations, but try it. I understand that it's uncomfortable, but that is where the growth happens. So the key takeaways from today are: one, Live 360s, when done right, are a powerful tool for leadership growth and team trust. Number two, use a structured framework like stop, start, and continue to guide the feedback. That always helps. Give people a framework to work within, and then it feels consistent for everybody getting the feedback. Number three, set clear ground rules to create a safe and productive environment. Again, helpful, kind, direct. Here's how the process is going to work. This is what it's going to look like. Here's when you can respond to the feedback. Those ground rules help make it fair for everyone and help everybody understand the expectations. Number four, prepare your team with the right mindset, the ownership mindset. Feedback truly is a gift. There is nothing to be scared of when getting feedback. Nothing. It will help you grow, and there's always a way to own something in the feedback that you're given. And then number five, avoid harmful feedback behaviors. Be specific, be kind, be actionable. Do not weaponize your feedback. Do not come in hot. Don't bring in grievances. Specific, kind, helpful, actionable feedback given with the very best intentions of I care about you as a teammate, and this is feedback for you to consider so that you can grow and be a better teammate and be a better leader and be a better human. Okay, that is my advice on giving a Live 360. Hopefully that was helpful for you. If you would like to discuss how to make this happen, DM me. I'm always happy to chat with you about doing these types of things. I know it might seem a little out there, but it really is positive and impactful if done right. So with that, I will leave you for your day. I hope it's a fantastic one. If you like this podcast, please click on subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Leave a comment. I always love to engage with all of you, and it helps with the algorithms and continues to make this podcast even better and move up in the algorithms. So with that, I will leave you for your day. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.